Welcome to Leading Minds Revealed, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on how today's top leaders harness the power of mindfulness to conquer the fast-paced, ever-changing world of business. In each episode, we sit down with C-suite executives and leaders who share their strategies for navigating rapid change with skill and clarity. Join us as we uncover the transformative mindsets that drive extraordinary leadership. These insights aren't found in business books, and they'll revolutionize the way you lead. And now, here's your host, Michael Apollo.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Leading Minds Revealed. In today's episode, we're going to explore what it truly means to lead with purpose during periods of rapid transformation, how leaders can stay grounded amid complexity, and how a human-centered approach to technology, especially AI, can shape sustainable business outcomes. My guest today is a senior technology executive and CIO who has spent decades leading large-scale transformations across digital, cloud, and now AI-driven environments. What makes his perspective especially powerful is his unwavering commitment to using technology to empower people, not replace them. From building purpose-driven cultures and preparing workforces for change, to redefining how leaders think about measurement, transparency, and customer obsession, his work offers a masterclass in future-ready leadership. With that, I'm delighted to welcome the Chief Information Officer of U.S. Bank, Mo Jamous, to the show. Welcome, Mo. So great to have you here at the Leading Minds Revealed.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Before we dive in, I want to share a bit of context to our listeners. So Mo and I had a very rich conversation about leadership, transformation, and what's really required of leaders right now. I think so many leaders so many of us, people in general, but leaders in particular, transformation, change, uncertainty is on the top of everybody's mind. And one theme that kept coming up again and again is that purpose as an anchor during uncertainty. And so, Mo, I'd love to start there. And, what does purpose mean to you today? And why has it remained such a central force in how you lead, especially through times of transformation?
Yeah, no, Michael, this is really a very important topic, and actually a topic that is dear to my heart. To be honest with you, over history, technology has always changed, and you're always going to have the new technologies come and go. But what is super important that organizations still stay true to their DNA and know why they're there. Actually growing up as a kid, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I had a disabled parent that I when I grew up, and thought by being a doctor that is my way of helping my dad at the time through his disability. And then until I got to college, and I got my first job in college at the computer help desk, and the person that actually hired me 3 months into the job left to go do something else. The next day, actually, the manager of that department comes down. That was at Portland State University, and then she wanted to talk to me, and her name was Carol. I still remember that very clearly. And she goes, "Well, Mo, so and so just left, and I would love to consider you for that role." And I looked back at her. I was 18 at the time. I was like, "What, Carol? Why do you think I can do this job? I just got here." And then she looks back at me. I was like, well, to me, it is very clear how much you really love technology, how much you really love helping others and working with others. And I think those things are very critical for this particular role. So why don't you go home and think about, what I'm offering you here? So I remember taking the train home that day, and I just kept thinking about what you just said, which is really true, how much I really loved technology, but also more importantly, how much I loved working with others and helping others. And I got to really start reflecting, and that what I was really, really passionate about growing up was not necessarily being a doctor, but it was really more about how do we use technology to help others, and how do you really the goal was making an impact and really changing the lives of others, regardless whether it's in the field of medicine, technology, accounting, law, whatever field it is. It's so the objective became very clear, and my purpose became very clear. Really finding fulfillment in how do I use technology to create transformational impact, and really impacting the lives of others and helping them create opportunities and making a difference in their lives. I think knowing your why, knowing your purpose, whether as an individual level, as a team, as an organization, or a whole, an enterprise, is super critical. So through these transformations, because at the end of the day, the means might change, the transformation might change, the technology might change, but what is super critical remains is your core values, your vision for the future, and really, at the end of the day, is how do we use technology to empower people and really make their lives better.
I've been hearing that more and more on. I recently listened to this webinar, and actually, I think it was an interview between the chief transformation officer at Zapier, and Zapier is, for those of you who don't know, really does a lot of automation-based work, and it's an automation platform that connects all these various different digital platforms. And I think they're doing a really interesting job leading on in the democratization of AI. And every leader that he was interviewing was talking about how much they're doubling down on being very clear on the mission, the vision, and the values, and building from there. And it seems like, especially during times of uncertainty and transformation, having that deep clarity is just so important. And so, what are some of the ways that you foster that clarity around the purpose from an organizational level, team level, and I guess from an individual level for yourself? Like, what are some principles that could help support that?
Yeah, look, it's actually, appreciate you mentioned the example you just shared. One thing, actually, one of a previous mentor taught me before, and that is really stuck with me, is when we lead with purpose, results will always follow. And and I think having that clarity and purpose is super critical. But my job as a leader is to make sure that take these big ideas and really mission statements and the purpose of our organization, help translate it to engineers and my team in a way that they can relate to. So one thing that I've always done, just an example here, as a leader, something that I've always done and became almost a personal ritual over the last 10 years. I start my day every morning spending half an hour to an hour just reviewing customer feedback, looking at all of the feedback that come in for our digital platform or online and mobile banking platforms or branches or et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's not like I do that because I don't trust the team to fix them, or I don't trust the team to tell me what the problems are. I do that to keep myself grounded. Is that why am I here? Why do I wake up every morning and go to work and really do what I do? So I think that is super critical that each one of us understand how do we relate to that bigger picture and to that sense of purpose that we have. And then, so after doing that, my direct started to doing that. And then their team started to doing that. And then eventually we were able to transform pretty much the entire digital organization to start doing that by having each team take 2 hours after every sprint to review customer feedback. So what started as a personal habit became a culture of how we operate as an organization. And then after that, things like examples that I tell my engineers, customer centricity and customer obsession, which is a big part of our purpose, is really about caring about our customers as much as they do. And some of the things that you can do to really help that. It's not like you can go to the store and say, can I buy a couple of pounds of customer centricity today? It doesn't work that way. But there are certain things that each one of us that can do to make sure that we are being customer centric. Like if you are an engineer and you are writing code, instrumenting your code with the proper logging, with the right tagging, with all of the observability frameworks that you're using, allows you to track errors and catch problems fast or before they happen. If you are in DevOps and you get an alert at 2 a.m. in the morning and about some sort of a pod having a crash or not working or recycling, instead of just putting it off till 7 a.m. in the morning or 8 a.m. in the morning, getting up to just be able to look at it and addressing it right there, that's another form of customer centricity. If you're a team leader, a manager, looking at customer feedback and just making sure that you are connected to what your customers are saying, that's another form of customer centricity. So each one of us, there are tons and tons of things that you could be doing on a daily basis to stay related to the customer, but also most importantly to your purpose, to the purpose of why you're there at your organization.
If I could loop back, what I was hearing there is that one of the ways to really stay connected to the underlying mission, vision, and purpose is to translate it to a very practical analogy or a habit that you can integrate into your daily activity. And, for example, here, customer centricity and this customer obsession being like a core one for US Bank. And then what that allows us to do is to really measure or at least to have that be a benchmark of the actions that we take and continuously refining towards that. And whatever that purpose and mission, the vision that an organization has, I think it's so important to remind ourselves, what are our capabilities? What is it that we truly value? What is the direction of this organization? What do we want to achieve? And now how do we make it so it's something very concrete and approachable that each and every one of us can hold on to? And, I think what's happening right now within sort of AI-driven transformation, the opposite could be just reactively chasing the next shiny thing. And I think this is a challenge that any organization face. I know it's a challenge that I face leading my organization, and then many various iterations over the past 15 years that we've underwent and different projects that we've taken on, where inevitably there's either scope creep or just an idea that gets championed by an individual that perhaps doesn't align. And I think right now there's a huge risk with that, especially, and I think the reason why so many leaders such as yourself are doubling down, this is at least my perception, on being very clear on the core ideology of the company, is because then what you choose to do with AI can help amplify that. But if you're just like with any type of transformation that you would bring in, if it's not aligned, then it could be a huge distraction and a huge risk to the organization. And so, what do you think about that? And then as well, what has been the relationship with AI at US Bank? What is in terms of introducing that transformation and that, introducing that layer of technology and embedding it across the organization?
Yeah, look, I think it's you really nailed it one, and you said just paraphrased it in a much more articulate way than I did. Like in terms of always staying connected to the purpose and really the vision and really the core values as a company, regardless what the transformation is. And I agree with that 100%. I think innovating for the sake of innovation, it's not always successful. Doing tech for the sake of tech oftentimes falls flat and really does not really accomplish the things that technology is set out to accomplish. But being purposeful about innovation, about having a strategy, in terms of why you're innovating is super clear. And I think, especially like with AI, I think one of the things that I've always made sure is we start with, this whole concept of awareness, building understanding across the organization of why AI is needed and the business cases that really where AI can help and make a difference. And also helping engineers and product managers and the rest of organization connect to what's in it for me. I think, as humans, I think that question always is on our head. And I think making sure that this technology is here to empower and enable and really help and augment, I think all of these verbs that I mentioned rather than replace is super critical to reassure everybody of how they can play a role in terms of moving the technology, not only the technology forward, but the purpose of the technology. I think the second thing is really what we've done, really kind of making sure, we're always doing is creating a genuine buy-in by addressing those fears and making sure that everybody is upskilled and have the proper knowledge to contextualize training and make sure that our training is integrated into the actual workflows and not just on the tool functionality. And then creating really the whole environment around it is to make sure that, there is a hands-on practice with AI tools and safe environment and having a progressive rollout strategy. So these things are super critical, to make sure that everyone is reassured that, hey, this technology is here to help and to really to empower rather than replace.
So at US Bank, when really communicating the why AI can is something that we wish that we want to consider, was that the core messaging that this is very much something that's going to help empower us. This is going to help empower our clients. Is going to empower us as an organization, and then on top of that is. Was that as well aligned to the "what's in it for me" messaging, and or was that something different that was communicated?
No, absolutely. I think we made sure, like, 3 years ago when we were rolling out AI, or 2 years ago, is definitely making sure that we communicated, the why and what's in it for everybody and how we're all going to get there together. But, oftentimes, people live in the real world, correct? And there's so much noise and there's a lots of chatter about, how AI is going to replace everyone if possible. Unfortunately, there is a little bit kind of zealousy that's happening in the industry, outside of US Bank or any other company, but really overall, that's really there is this talk about, oh, well, how in 5 years you're not going to need this type of skill set, or you're not going to need engineers, or you're not going to need program manager. And I completely reject that notion that really, AI or any other technology is really there to replace people. I do believe, well, there are still a lot of things we need to figure out, but we have focused, over the last 3 years. The message is, how do we use this technology to empower people and really augment people and make sure that this technology is assisting everybody in becoming more productive. But the most important thing is really, how do we use AI to create value? Because, I think you can look at it as a way to cut costs, and that is really a very narrow view of what the technology can do. I think what the more strategic conversations to have, and we're always trying to have, is can we use AI to create value and by growing the business or improving customer experiences or reducing fraud or removing some of the frictions that exist in the environment that customers have to deal with. I think that is, well, definitely you can use AI to help expedite, software development or product development, or perhaps improve, automate some of the workflows. But I think all of that is really done with the objective of improving things for the customer. How do we get products faster in the hands of the customers? How do we improve their experiences when they're interacting with us, whether through digital, over the phone, or in the branches? And then how do we improve the quality of the final product we're giving to them? So I think I've always been very clear about what this technology is and really what is the potential. I believe the potential is limitless. I mean, to be honest with you, there are so many things that we can do to automate, we can do to improve experiences. And I think really the challenge, and this is really more of an industry challenge, I think it is very tempting to say, I'm going to use AI to cut, or make it reduce costs, reduce costs. But I do think the companies that will thrive in the end are the ones that are able to find that healthy blend of efficiency and reinvesting some of that efficiency to create new capabilities and new value for their new value streams for their customers.
I'm so aligned with that view because, I've been following a number of, just recently I was listening to Jeffrey Hinton on the Diary of a CEO podcast, a recent interview with him. And for those of you who are fresh and tuning in, he won the Nobel Prize with his work in artificial intelligence. And there's so much messaging, I think, and especially, and I'm noticing it from VC-backed AI CEOs about the disruption that it's going to cause. And I think it's creating a narrative of this doom and gloom in the world. And I think that can be very profitable, right? If it bleeds, it reads type thing. And so if suddenly it's like, well, this is going to create digital twins, and suddenly have 1,000 of you now being taken care of by AI, it's a very compelling narrative to I think raise a lot of money. But when I speak to executives, leaders, leading transformation on the ground level, actually working, developing, coding, integrating to workflows, it's a bit of a different story. It's very pragmatic. It's very practical, like you're saying. And recently, I actually interviewed Mohan Reddy. He's the head of the Human Perception Lab at Stanford, and he's involved with another organization called Cornerstone. And he shared how there's like this unique evolution right now that we're going through from, in the past it was all about the role that an individual inhabits, and let's build for this role and develop for this role. Then it's shifted recently, I'd say within the past 5, 10, 15 years, to skills. It was a skills-based development. And then now a very unique model that they've built is it's task-based development. So now it's really honing in to the tasks and how can we understand who does the tasks? How do we work on the tasks? What do we automate? What do we provide for AI to work on? And how we leverage human skills to really work and thrive within this emerging reality. And it's about learning to adapt, and very, very much learning how to collaborate effectively and to leverage our innate human abilities to manage these tasks as effectively as possible. It's really interesting, and the what's happening like on the real ground level. And you've led through multiple ways of transformation. I know this is something that we discussed in the past as well, how, from early computing to cloud and now AI, and how it's pretty hilarious that there's, many organizations, including my own, we're still trying to catch up on integrating the cloud layers and doing a lot of sort of foundational work, privacy, security, et cetera. And how now there's this new layer, right, of another transformation layered on multiple other transformations. So, when you look at these different waves of transformation, what has stayed constant for you as a leader across all of these shifts?
Yeah. Look, I mean, definitely, sticking to my core values, correct? I mean, like we talked earlier about remembering what my purpose is. Why am I there? I'm there to make sure that we are creating transformational impact and making the lives of others better through technology, correct? And what are some of the core values that I care about, the things that are important to me, things, how do I create an organization, like I mentioned, that is purpose driven, but then also that is collaborative. I think, to be honest with you, during this transformation, having a collaborative organization, people that work well together, that really understand, hey, there's something that is bigger than themselves in this, and go above and beyond to really stay true to our mission and to our purpose. Super important, and that's really how innovation moves. I mean, it's super hard to really move innovation forward when people are not necessarily working well together. And I think so. Collaboration is super critical, to make progress. And it's actually, I'll come back to this point. I think the second thing that's important is really, like I mentioned, staying close to the customer and being customer obsessed. And then last but not least, remain focused on the business outcomes. Like, what is your company strategy? And really remember that the technology that you're working on, whether it's blockchain, whether it's cloud, whether it's AI, or whatever any emerging technology you're working at, it's there to fulfill your business outcomes and to continue to serve your customers in the best way you can. So those things have always kind of stayed true to me. But the how, is also very important, and I think those were the core values. Become super critical. I think one of the things when you have a technology like AI, where everybody is, turns on YouTube or any forms of social media, and you're being reminded of how AI is going to take everyone's job. It creates sense of insecurity, insecurities, unfortunately, and then sometimes, we're human, correct? It creates also an unhealthy level of competition, where you kind of start, oh well, I need to show how good I am to be able to prove, if there was, a limited amount of jobs, and I want to make sure that I'm, I have one, and maybe try to make sure that I'm the best at everything that I do. So you lose a little bit of kind of that sense of collaboration, perhaps, and that worries me a bit, to be honest with you, when we create this level of unhealthy competition, what I call, because of that's based on fear. Competition is always good, but it has to have good grounding, and that is really grounded by a purpose and an ethical framework. So that I'm constantly, reminded of that hey, during times of uncertainty, it is super important that we remind of each other of our purpose and of our core values, especially the one around collaboration. The other also important thing to remember, like these technologies, if you look at the chronology of these technologies, it's not like one has replaced the other. Actually, it's a build-up. For us to get to where we are today, we had to make advances in computing. Then came in, the mobile phone. Then came in the whole digital, and then came in computing. And if you think about it, for AI to have to be where it's at today, what do we need? We need large amounts of compute. We need large amounts of data, and we need, a way to engage the customer to use, which is digitally, to be able to use the AI platforms that we have today. So all of these previous technologies have really kind of led us to get to where we are today. And I'm sure there will be another phase post AI, or another form of AI, that will keep moving us forward. So technology is incremental, and that's the beauty of it. And I think, and that's why your values and your purpose have to remain the same. And then but expect it's going to go through different phases and through different challenges based on what the transformation is. And that's always important to remember.
I'm hearing from a lot of people that, well, AI is different, that it's an exponential, that it can be self-iterating and self-evolving. What are your thoughts around that? How this is inherently perhaps a different type of transformation or a different type of technology?
I mean, look, it's absolutely correct that it is faster. It is, it's, accelerating at a much, much faster than it ever has. But then the reality is, I think it's also important to remember the technology has so much potential and capability. I think it's also important to remember that the adoption is still lagging. And I don't know if the adoption is really, really much, much faster than the mobile phones, for example, or digital apps, or really cloud has moved. And I think, I'm sure you've seen some of the studies about how much a lot of the POC experiments never make it to production. I think upward of 90 or 95%. I'm sure everybody has seen those studies, or most people have. But I think a lot of that is because I think the adoption is still not there. The ecosystem is still not ready to get a lot of things into production. Well, AI itself is very, very capable as a technology, as a platform, but the application of AI in the real world is seriously lagging. So I don't know if I agree with that notion that this is moving much, much faster than, for example, the mobile phone has. I do believe there is a difference between the capability itself of AI and how fast people have adopted it. But I don't want to also, diminish what you just mentioned, because I think there is some truth to it, that this technology is self-iterative, and it's really kind of self-evolving, and there's some truth to it. But also, I do believe we are also years away from what, you hear that term AGI or super intelligence. I don't really believe it's as close as some of the tech companies want us to believe. And actually, if you started, the industry is starting to even backtrack, from that, standard. Oh, it's 2 to 3 years away. Now it's probably 5 to 10 years, and some other people probably saying 10 to 20 years, and that's okay. I mean, and that's really that's just part of any transformation. So, while I believe the progress is good, it's and is and I think it's really on par with other probably consider, where mobile and digital has been. But I also understand, the other side of the argument, that this technology has a potential to be self-evolving and really iterate much, much faster than previous ones.
So, from your perspective, like outside of those in tech roles, what have you noticed as, leaders facing, where leaders are facing the biggest challenges in having their teams adopt or adapt to AI?
Yeah, look, I think there is a few things that are still lack of awareness. I think a lot of what is super critical for any leader to make grounds and with AI is to be strategic about how you're going to upscale the organization, because a lot of these tools, I mean, if you consider like garbage in, garbage out, and by the way, I mean, the cost of tokens is still not very cheap, especially when you have thousands of employees in an organization, making sure that you are being efficient and how much tokens you're spending, every day, prompting these models and sending information in and getting information back is very important, because especially if there's no foundation or training to really teaching the organization how to prompt these systems correctly. So having a healthy training curriculum that is really designed to train the entire organization, upskill the entire organization around prompting and how to use these tools effectively is an important thing. And look, it's it takes time. I mean, to when you have an organization of tens of thousands of people and an organization that is extremely busy, getting any organization to complete any sort of training, that many people to do any sort of training is going to take a long time. So that's definitely a challenge. Another way is, getting people to change how they work, developers, how they write code, how they test their code, how do they maintain it. It takes, that takes a lot of time to get people to change their ways of working. Not just only developers, but really every employee. Just kind of tell them, hey, everything that you have learned, you need to unlearn, and here's a new way of doing it. That takes time.
How do you do that? How do you do it? Like, what is, I think perhaps the first element of building that, you hear the terms around going around AI literacy to AI fluency. That's one layer of being able to understand the jargon, understand the platforms, understand the use cases. But when it comes to changing the way that people work, like what's the path towards that? Actually, maybe let's look at it from a couple ways. What are some of the things that get in the way? And what are some of the things that we can do as leaders to unlock that capability?
Yeah, look, I think it's at the end of the day, it goes back. People want to know what's in it for me. Like how can AI, help me with my day-to-day activities. So one of the things, probably is start with, conducting a department-specific assessments. Identifying some of the pain points and how AI can really address some of those. How do you prioritize some of those use cases based on your assessment that you can start to resolve with AI through impact, feasibility, and then perhaps demonstrate to that group that you can get quick wins with AI potential, and then really frame AI as a solving their specific challenges, not as a technical initiative, but really as an area that can really address some of their pain points. So I think getting people grounded, and this goes back to what I said earlier, getting people grounded into why are we using AI? How AI can help you? What's in it for you? And how can it solve some of problems? Actually, breaks down that fear barrier, breaks down that, say, like mistrust barrier about, oh, well, they want to teach me AI so they can get rid of me or whatever. So I think it's really having that conversation and demonstrating to how AI can help them, with their day-to-day jobs, and get them to use it. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of resistance to people using, mobile apps to do their banking 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But I think little by little, by us being able to demonstrate, what, we can give you access to your checking account and being able to check your balances or do a deposit a check or sell someone money without anyone stealing your money or hacking into your account or really doing it in a way that's going to compromise your identity. I think doing all of these things, with small little wins, has built up the trust of the consumer with the banks and how you can use digital banking to really serve their needs. And I think it's kind of the same way here. I mean, it's how demonstrating little by little, how can AI help our employees to do their job easier, better, and really allow them to focus on the big picture and really making sure that that their time is better spent on more strategic things rather than the tedious things. And also another thing, making sure that kind of avoiding one size fits all toolkits. The different departments are going to use different tools and really that are tailored to solve their problems and their need. So making sure that, being open-minded, like, hey, there are some people that are going to use Copilot. Maybe there are some teams that might get, better need by having an enterprise GPTs of some sort of, or other teams that probably on the engineering side can, maybe they need to build some sort of an application or a wrapper using those model APIs. So I think be open-minded to the idea that, hey, that we're not going to have just only one tool for the whole company and it's going to solve everyone's problems. So I think that's important to remember. And then as you're rolling out these technologies, I think having a strategy, a progressive rollout strategy, where maybe one workflow, one team at a time, learn and iterate, will help build up trust. And really kind of, as people starting to see their peers and their coworkers experimenting successfully, and really kind of helping nurture their growth, it also helps them build up the confidence. And as you do all of that, always make sure you're training, and then you're marketing the wins and the successes and the learnings from that progressive rollout that you just did.
Oh, I think that is so pragmatic and practical, and I love the template that you've laid out there, because it really is that sort of stage of experimentation. And it's so interesting how AI in particular is very much like it's built in a way to interface with human language. And so it's almost like a collaborative technology that I'm finding, and different people may gravitate to different ways of interacting with the technology. And so it's really interesting to view it from that lens. And one of the most powerful parts of your story, that when I think back to one of the conversations that we've had, was how present you are with your teams. And even just hearing right now you walking through a very empathetic, very people-centered approach towards rolling and introducing AI, for example. But again, it's any transformation, but you could glean these principles and apply it to as a foundational approach to introducing any type of change. But what struck me is like how you spend your time on the floor, holding listening sessions, intentionally making yourself available. Thinking about what's happening right now, why is this kind of leadership presence so critical, especially as there is this sort of fear and uncertainty rising around this technology?
That is super critical, Michael, to be available, not just only able, but also available as a leader is super critical, especially to your team. And during those times of uncertainty, as people are seeing that, the job responsibilities are changing daily, or maybe the expectations are higher than they've ever been. And I think having these human conversations and smaller session conversations goes a long way. Well, we definitely always have had town halls and department meetings and really celebrated our wins and talk about our strategies. I think those smaller sessions discussions go a long way. So anytime like I've traveled to any new location, I've always kind of make sure that I have an hour on the calendar to spend with the local team, just on a round table, asking, giving people a chance to ask questions. I don't come in with any presentation. I don't really come in with any agenda, just really an open, format where people can ask whatever topic questions that they have, whatever topics they want to discuss. And really that is super, I enjoy it a lot, first of all, because I love spending time with the team. And I think the team just feel more comfortable asking questions, in a little bit more unfiltered way, because it's a more cozy, more smaller setting rather than a town hall when you have hundreds or thousands of people there. So that works really, really well. And I think, or even just, stepping out of your office between meetings and just talking to engineers one-on-one, or, a little huddle room, and sometimes just, whiteboarding with them this idea or that, or that thing that they're working on, and being able to learn about from them. And then also, if they're interested to, for opinion, to share feedback about some of the things work. It actually engineers feel really, really, really excited that the leaders, care to listen to them, care to understand their concerns, but then also celebrate their wins. Oftentimes, you don't necessarily, people are not necessarily looking for thousands of dollars of bonuses every year. Well, that might be important to some people, but actually, oftentimes people just get so happy by just being recognized, by being heard, by being seen by their leaders, and I think building that relationship with the team, and creating the space and the time to see them, to hear them, to know that, they're there, I'm here, and we're here for each other and to help each other and grow it together is super critical.
There's some really interesting insights from that I've been hearing is how powerful or how important it is to be on the ground level right now of change, because it seems to be happening at such a fast speed. The speed to launch, the change cycles, project cycles are speeding up, and detached leadership it's just not functional, because you need to have that sort of pulse of what's happening here. And I think what you share is a, it's a very human-centered approach to say, okay, well, how do I maintain connection? How do I create these opportunities wherever I am to carve out some time to really be intentional with being present? And just that intention and those small opportunities to connect, or to walk the floor, or to sit in on a meeting, or to with a client or with a team and ask those questions and just be open, I think is just so important, and it just makes sense. I think it's an of extreme value. You know, you shared that there's this very empathetic approach that you have, very intentional approach that you have to supporting people. And you mentioned that, you had your early aspirations to become a doctor, and your experience with your father, and how that's um, really shaped your desire to help others. How did these early life experiences and this intention to be of service really influence the leader that you've become today?
Yeah, no, I mean, it has a huge impact on really forming, when I say, my core values, my purpose, and who I became, like I mentioned earlier. And really, it's uh, I think, at the end of the day, if you think about it, one of my happiest moment, as a leader, is when I'm really being able to recognize somebody for the great work they do, or taking somebody who's really needed help and being able to mentor them and get better at something, a skill set, or something that they have sought me out for, or something that I recognize, what, this is a person of great potential, and perhaps I can make a difference and help them in whatever way I can. Or, as also being able to do something that give joy to our customers and make their daily lives better. So everything that I do, to be honest with you, whether in the way that I interact with my employees, and the way that I help to grow them, and really create opportunities for them, to the way I think about customer experiences, and how I really use technology to build and help shape the customer experiences and innovations, to the way I interact with my peers and my coworkers. I think this culture of service is paramount to how I think about everything that I do, and how I interact with all of the humans that I either work with, or manage, or really help serve, like our customers. I think that has been the way I grew up, has been foundational to this core philosophy of how I deal with the world.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I can definitely feel the impact that your father has had in your development and growth, and that aspiration that you've had to be of service for others. You could see it clearly. It's incredible when recently, I think I had one of my guests. He shared this unique curiosity that he had. When you talk about digital transformation, is it really the transformation a digital transformation, or is it a human transformation that is leading and introducing some type of digital technology? And I think you really have that as the core of your focus is really what is the human impact here. And so, for leaders navigating AI-driven change right now, where should they begin if they want to lead with this greater purpose, greater sense of more of a human-focused approach rather than perhaps more of like a fear-based approach or a pure efficiency type of play?
Yeah, no, I that's super important, Michael, especially during during those times of uncertainty, especially like you mentioned, technology moving so fast. A lot of things are changing all the time. Yeah, I think back to what I mentioned earlier. I think as a leader, I think it's very clear for me, regardless what the transformation is, whether it been cloud, digital, or AI. I think my advice to any leader that's leading through this times of change, in particular with AI, remember, that your purpose, remember your core values, and make sure always put, the human at the center of it. Whether it's your employees by making sure you're taking the time to help them navigate, through this transformation by making sure you upskill them, making sure you trying to explain to them in a reassuring way what is the impact of this technology and this transformation in their lives, by making sure that they help figure out how they can use AI in their day-to-day lives in a very positive way. Or whether also, your customers, how to use AI to make sure to do what's best for the customer by maximizing, this technology to help improve the customer experiences, help, offer them better products. And then there's no shame in also growing your business and in the process, because at the end of the day, the free market, the way it works, if you have an amazing product and amazing experiences, people will always buy your product. And I think this is just as how value creation works. And that's what I mentioned earlier, about when you lead with purpose, results will always follow. So if your purpose is really creating value for your customers, and for your employees, you are going to always get 100% of your 100% effort from your employees. And then you're always going to have your customers buying your product. And then as a result of that, you're going to have satisfied employees that always want to be there, a growing business, and then shareholders that are happy with the progress of your company. So this is just how it works. It's really, even though you're not waking every morning obsessing about how much money you make, you're starting with purpose, you're starting with your core values, but the result of that is always growth for your employees, for your customers, and then eventually for your whole business.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mo. I think it's such an important reminder to really. I think there's so many people I know, including myself, that just feel groundless during change and uncertainty. And what I found as well for myself, returning back to those foundational principles and really understanding your own values, those endure through all change, all time, all transformation, personal and professional. And I think you've really grounded here how organizations can remember to focus on that and the outcomes that can come from that. And so as we come to the tail end here of the episode, how can our listeners learn more about you and follow your your insights?
Yeah, look, I actually, of course, I publish a lot of blogs and on LinkedIn and Medium, and so always, check in my website, mojamous.com. I have a link to all of the Medium blogs there, or check me out on LinkedIn as well. So always more than happy to share my knowledge, my insights, and where I see the technology is heading, and not only technology, but also insights about leadership and change management, and how to deal with all of the technological transformation that's happening in front of our eyes. So, but also, if you have any questions, anything I can do to help anyone out there, always drop me a line, whether on LinkedIn or through my website, and I'm more than happy to get with you and have more further conversations.
Fantastic. Well, we'll definitely include those links in the description, so please do check them out. Mo, thank you so much for such a thoughtful, grounded, and deeply human centered conversation here. I know this has been incredibly beneficial for me, and I know our listeners will have many takeaways to move forward here as they traverse this new age of AI that we're entering into. And also, whatever transformation comes our way, how to really I really took away how to stay grounded through this time by really understanding what is your purpose and really understanding what are the core principles that drive you and in any situation that you're in. And so, yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me, and looking forward to future discussions as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks all to our listeners as well for tuning in. This brings us to the end of another episode of Leading Minds Revealed. I'll see you on the next one.
Leading Minds Revealed podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights, join the conversation, and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.